Every leader has them, draggers, the ones who resist, complain, and slow everything down. If you let them, they'll poison your culture and frustrate your champions. In this episode, I'm breaking down how to lead through resistance, coach the laggers, empower the champions, and make sure draggers don't hold your team back. It's time to say it. No more draggers.
I'm Rich Levene, and this is Meet Me at the Gate, where we're not just talking theory, we're tackling real-world problems head-on, driving solutions that supercharge productivity and team dynamics. Every episode is a journey towards improvement, empowering you, the manager, to lead with innovation and confidence. Join us to transform everyday roadblocks into highways for success.
Motivation doesn't begin with tasks. It begins with the question, why? Simon Sinek made this famous in his book, Start With Why. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And Gallup research even backs this up. Employees are 3.5 times more engaged when they feel like their work connects to the mission of the organization. Let me give you the real deal. Gallup's Q12 engagement survey includes a question that crystallizes this connection. And the connection is, the mission or purpose of my organization makes me feel like my job is important. When companies deeply invest in that why, they see higher engagement, productivity, retention, and customer satisfaction. But here's the sobering reality. As of mid-2025, only about 32% of US employees are actively engaged, and globally, this number is yet even lower. That gap between how many people could be engaged and how many people are engaged is both a wake-up call and an opportunity. So when we talk about motivation, starting with purpose, we're not just speaking philosophy. We're pointing to one of the strongest levers that leaders have to lift in organizational performance. Why does this matter? Well, for one, you're already stressed out because you know that not everyone is motivated. And two, engaged employees deliver more. Gallup finds that highly engaged teams benefit from higher productivity, customer loyalty, profitability, and well-being, with significantly lower absentee and turnover. The mission does matter, but it's very rare. Less than a third of employees feel deeply connected to their organization's purpose. That's a major leadership opportunity. In my book, I lay out the 5 P's rule. Put people before plans, processes, products, and profits. Get that order wrong, and you're never going to get true motivation. When we launched Shift Happens at eBlock Houston earlier this year, I didn't stand up in front of everybody and say, we're going to improve efficiency by 15%. I said, we're going to become the most trusted auction in the world. That one sentence carried more weight than any speech or spreadsheet because it was about dignity. It made people feel part of something bigger than themselves. But here's the deeper truth. Not everyone is motivated by the same thing. If you try to motivate your whole team in the same way, you're going to miss the mark every time. Before I get into the 3 ways, let me connect this back to something that many of you already know, the DISC assessment. One of the most useful parts of DISC isn't just the 4 letters. It's the section of the report that shows how someone's behavior shifts in 3 states. And the 3 states are when everything's going good, their natural, comfortable style. When things are becoming stressful or strenuous, subtle change start to show. And then last, when things are downright stressful, their pressure behaviors come out. And here's the kicker. This doesn't just show how they see themselves, it shows how others are likely to see them in those moments. And that is gold for a leader. Why? Because people's true motivators often surface under stress. When things are easy, people can mask or blend in. But when the pressure hits, whether it's check-in delays, arbitration heat, or a tough client, that's when you see what really drives them. So if you don't have formal tools like driving forces, you can still uncover motivation by paying close attention. Here are 3 ways to do it. Number 1, you've got to ask the right questions. What part of your job gives the most energy? What kind of work drains you? When you feel most proud of your work, what made that moment meaningful? People will tell you what drives them if you're just willing to ask the questions and then listen carefully. The second part is which behavior shows up under pressure. Motivation shows up most clearly when times get tough. Think of it like those DISC stress responses. When you're not just seeing what they do, you're seeing what matters to them. So, for example, a resourceful one would say, how do we save time? How do we go faster? An altruistic person would say, how do we take care of the employees? What are the customers going to say? And that commanding one says simply, I'll take charge. Stress strips away the polish and shows you the driver underneath. And then number 3, you need to test in small experiments. Give someone a stretch assignment to get them out of their comfort zone, and then watch what happens. Do they thrive with autonomy, or do they need structure? Do they light up when they're learning something new, or when they're leading others? Each reaction is a clue to what motivates them. But let's talk about DISC under stress. And let's talk about the 12 driving forces that help you uncover the motivators. So D, a high D, that is our dominant personality. And under stress, these people take control, they're decisive, and they can come off as blunt and forceful. And the driving force or their motivator is usually commanding. And this is motivated by influence, authority, and results. Now let's talk about the yellow, the I, the high influence. Under stress, high I's or yellows, they like to talk more, they persuade even harder, and they seek reassurance from others. So what does this tell us about their motivation? It means they like to be collaborative or even altruistic. They're motivated by the connections, the relationships, and helping others. So let's move on to S, the greens, the high S's as a matter of fact. Under stress, the green personality or the steadies, they withdraw, they slow down, they resist the sudden change, and they want stability. So the driving force that's uncovered here is structure and harmony. They're motivated by order, by security, and balance in their environment. And then finally, we've got the blues, or the C, the high C's. That's compliance. Under stress, these guys become overly critical, super rigid, and focus on details and rules. And, well, that's pretty much par for a blue. They were already critical and rigid and focused, and now they're even more so. But what does this tell us about their motivation? It means they're probably motivated by accuracy, by systems, by logic. They don't bring in much emotion. To go through these and learn these, it takes time and it takes patience, but it works. And sometimes, well, you don't have the budget or the buy-in for the tools, and that's what makes this path work. Now, if you do have the resources, the 12 driving forces is like putting on glasses. It clears up what used to be fuzzy. It breaks down motivations into 6 areas. Each has 2 sides. So 12 drivers in all, 6 times 2. And those 6 sides are knowledge, utility, surroundings, others, power, and methodology. Here's how it plays out. Knowledge. There's 2 sides, intellectual and instinctive. On the intellectual side, you're driven to learn for the sake of learning. Let me give you an example. You love professional development workshops, even if there's no immediate application. Or if you're instinctive, you're driven to apply what's useful right now. So an example would be, just show me the part of the training I can use today. All right, let's move on. Utility. The 2 sides to utility, resourceful and selfless. On resourceful, they're motivated by efficiency, by return on investment, ROI, and results. So they would constantly ask, how does this save us time or money? And then on a selfless person, they're motivated by serving others, regardless of return. They'll volunteer for extra tasks, even if there's no personal gain. Surroundings. The 2 sides to surroundings are harmonious and objective. Harmonious people are motivated by balance, aesthetics, environment. Let me give you an example. Somebody with harmony wants the office layout or auction lanes to feel right for people to do their best work. Whereas an objective one, motivated by form over function, they say, I don't care how it looks, they just want to know if it's going to work. Let's continue on. Others, the 2 sides to others. You have altruistic and intentional. Altruistic people are motivated by helping others without any strings attached. They'd be the first ones to mentor a new hire just because it feels good, versus an intentional person. They're motivated when it aligns with their goals. So they're going to help appear when it benefits the larger project that they're responsible for. Moving on, power. Commanding and collaborative are the two sides. Commanding, you're motivated by influence, by leadership, and control. So an example would be someone that steps up quickly when a decision needs to be made and wants their voice to be heard, versus a collaborative person. And collaborative people are motivated by shared success and teamwork. An example would be somebody who says, hey, let's decide as a group, and avoids the spotlight. And then our last one, it's methodologies. The two sides to methodologies are structured and receptive. Structured methodology person is motivated by order, by systems, by proven processes. An example would be somebody wants a step-by-step instruction before they're willing to take any action. Receptive, on the other hand, are motivated by new ideas, by innovation and variety. An example, why don't we try this instead? And then pushes for that change. At eBlock, I saw this in action. One of my managers was resourceful. His first question was, how does this save us time and money? Another was collaborative. She cared about whether everyone was moving together, not just for the ROI. And if I had only pitched efficiency, I would have lost her. But when I asked her to lead the coaching others, she leaned in fully. So here's another story. Jake, one of my managers, was clearly commanding. He wanted to be seen as the one leading the rollout of our new check-in process. If I would have sidelined him, he would have disengaged. Instead, I gave him ownership. Jake, you set the tone. It's your department. And guess what? He thrived. Mary, on the other hand, she was altruistic. Her first concern was, who's struggling? Who's falling behind? If I had only talked numbers to her, she would have turned and left. Instead, I made her the bridge. Hey, Mary, you keep checking in on the team and report back. What she did, it was find her purpose. And what I got was valuable insight. Same change, same vision, two completely different motivators. And because I adjusted, both got engaged. That's what driving forces gives you. It's a shortcut. It's not a replacement for leadership. It just saves you months of trial and error. So now let's be real. Not everyone's a champion. Every organization has three types of people. Champions, those who lean in, adapt to change quickly, and even pull others with them. And then you got the laggers. They're the ones who hesitate, they hang back, and they move slower than the rest. And then you got the dreaded draggers. Those who actively resist, undermine, and even try to pull everyone else backwards. This just isn't my opinion. It aligns with Everett Rogers' diffusions of innovations theory. And in any change effort, about 16% are innovators and early adapters, the champions. Roughly 68% are in the middle, the laggers, who eventually catch up. And then about 16% resist to the very end. They're the draggers. I'll never forget early on when we rolled out this new process to speed up check-in. Some people jumped in immediately, they leaned in, they made suggestions, they owned the change. They were the champions. Others sat back, arms crossed, and said, well, let's see if this lasts. That's a lagger. Cautious, slow to move, but not yet defiant. And then a few flat out said, this won't work. Those were the draggers. That moment taught me a key lesson. Champions pull the middle forward. If you spend all your time trying to win the draggers, you'll lose momentum. But if you ignore them completely, they'll poison your culture. Here's where DISC adds another layer of insight. Certain DISC tendencies show up much more often in each group. Let's take champions. They're often high Ds or high I profiles. They like to move fast, take risks, and jump into new ideas. Under stress, they take control or they rally others, which makes them natural early adapters. The laggers. These are often high S profiles, the greens, the steadies. They value stability and they dislike sudden change. They aren't against the vision, they just need time, reassurance, and proof before they buy in. With coaching, they often become steady, reliable champions. And then the draggers. These are often the high Cs or the blues. Sometimes even a high D, a stubborn red. They become rigid under stress, demanding proof, rules, and details, and sometimes using that as a shield against change. If they feel threatened, they resist even harder. Now, I don't mean to say that every high D is a champion and every high C is a dragger, but understanding this gives you clues about who's more likely to embrace change quickly, who needs time, and who is most likely to resist. So what group needs help? What do? You don't treat them all the same. Champions, they need recognition and influence. Give them visibility. Let them test and improve new processes. They become proof that change works. Laggers. Laggers need coaching and patience. They're not against you, they're just slower to adapt. Once they catch on, they become some of your most reliable people. And then, of course, the draggers. They need clarity, accountability, and consequences. If they refuse to align after coaching, they're undermining your culture. And sometimes you've got to clean house, not as a punishment, but as a protection for everyone else. So here's what matters. Focus too much on draggers, and you're going to burn yourself out. Focus only on champions, and the middle never moves. But empower champions and coach laggers, and the center of gravity shifts forward. And when you deal directly with draggers, you send a clear message. This vision matters, this culture matters, and we're not going to let one person derail it. So here are some action steps you can use. So number one, map out your team. Write down who are your champions, your laggers, your draggers. You need to be brutally honest with yourself. Now let's layer some disc on top of this. Ask yourself, what do you believe is their natural style? Are they high Ds, Is, S's, or C's? And how might that influence their reaction to this change? Number three, you need to make sure you're empowering your champions. Give one champion an opportunity this week to lead or showcase success. Number four, let's coach a lagger. Sit down with a lagger. Ask them, hey, what's holding you back? Give them one clear, safe next step, and then see what happens. And number five, you're going to have to confront a dragger. Be direct with one dragger. Set expectations. Give them a choice. And if they don't align, you must protect your culture. Here's the truth. People don't all move at the same pace. Champions thrive on momentum. Laggers need a reassurance, and draggers are going to test your resolve as a leader. DISC helps you see not just who they are, but how they respond and what they do. And when you lead each group the right way, you keep your culture healthy and your organization moving forward. So let's move on. And here's where most leaders might go wrong. They think that motivation is about cheerleading, about hyping people up with speeches and slogans. But here's the truth. Motivation isn't all about cheerleading. It's about measurement too. If you can't measure where your people are in the change process, you're flying blind. And that's why I love using the CBAM survey, the Concerns-Based Adoption Model. CBAM was developed at the University of Texas, and it's one of the best tools I've found for understanding how people move through change. In simple terms, CBAM tracks people's stages of concern, what they're worried about and what they're focused on during your change effort. The stages look like this. The first stage, awareness. I didn't even know this was happening. Number two, the informational stage. I want to know more about it. 3, the personal stage. How will this affect me? 4, the management stage. What do I actually need to do? Number 5, the consequence stage. Is this working? What impact is it having? Then number 6, the collaboration stage. How do we work together to make this better? And then finally, refocusing. I've got ideas on how we can improve it even more. Notice how this isn't about whether someone likes a change. It's about what's on their mind. And once you know that, you can tailor to how you lead them. When we ran CBAM at the auction, I gave it a roadmap. I wasn't guessing anymore. For example, the results showed about 30% of my team was stuck in the personal stage. Their biggest concern wasn't, is this system good for the company? It was, what does this mean for my job? Am I still valuable? That insight changes everything. If I had kept giving speeches about the vision and the big picture, it wouldn't have mattered. They weren't ready for that. What they needed was reassurance, coaching, and clear answer to the question, where do I fit in? CBAM gave me permission to stop throwing the same message at everyone and start meeting people where they are. This matters because leaders often make one of two mistakes. They assume that everyone is in the same stage. They over-communicate the vision, and half their team just wants a step-by-step. Or they rely on gut feelings. They think they know who's on board and who's resisting, but yet they don't have any data to back any of this up. The CBAM eliminates the guesswork. It tells you exactly where your people are on the curve, and that lets you coach individuals based on their concerns, celebrate progress as people move forward, anticipate resistance instead of being surprised by it. Now, here's where this all ties together. This shows your people how to behave under stress. Driving forces shows you why they behave that way, and CBAM shows you where you are in the change process. A high S with a structured, harmonious driver might get stuck at the personal or management stage because they're worried about stability. A high D with a commanding driver might jump straight to refocusing. Let me make this better, even before they've mastered the basics. When you use these tools together, you can predict who will move quickly, who will resist, and who needs extra support. So how do you put this to work? Well, run a CBAM survey in your organization. Ask people, what are they most concerned about? Group the responses by stage. Are people worried about personal impact? Are they worried about results? This tells you where to focus your leadership energy. And then you got to tailor your communication. Don't keep selling a vision to someone stuck in a personal concern. Instead, answer their, what does this mean for me? Celebrate the movement. When someone shifts from personal to management, that's progress, and it's worth recognizing. And then you can always layer this in with DISC and driving forces. Ask yourself, based on their style and motivators, what is most likely to help them move forward? Motivation isn't just about energy, it's about direction. And CBAM gives you the map. With it, you stop guessing who's resistant, who's curious, and who's committed. You know. And once you know, you can coach, you can communicate, and you can celebrate in a way that actually moves the whole organization forward. Now, here's the part that leaders often overlook. Change equals loss. Loss creates grief. Think about that. When you roll out a new technology, new processes, or even a new vision, people are losing something. Their old way of working, their comfort zone, sometimes it's even their identity. And grief doesn't show up the same way for everyone. Some people sprint forward, others crawl, and some just get stuck. And that's normal. Psychologist William Bridges, in his transitions model, described change as a three-part process: ending, losing, and letting go. People first experience what they're leaving behind. That's where the grief starts. 2, the neutral zone, a messy middle where old habits are gone, but new habits have not yet become comfortable. And then 3, the new beginning. And this is where energy and commitment finally return. In my book, You're Doing It Wrong, I argue that when leaders ignore this grief, they set themselves up for resistance. They aren't resisting you personally, they're grieving the loss of what was familiar. I saw this firsthand when we shut down an old manual process and replaced it with a new digital system using technology. Some employees weren't resisting because they hated the technology, they were resisting because they had lost something. And that was a sense of competence that came from being masters of their old system. Overnight, what they were good at didn't matter anymore, and that felt like a loss of identity. Instead of pushing harder on the why or demanding faster results, I learned to shift my question. Instead of asking, why aren't they motivated? I started asking, where are they in the grief process? Are they denying? This won't last. Are they resisting? This is stupid. I'm not doing it. Are they exploring? Okay, maybe I'll try it once. Or are they committing? I can see that this is working. That mind shift let me lead with empathy without lowering expectations. Here's another reality. People don't all learn at the same pace. The sprinters, they grab change fast, sometimes even before the process is fully built. They can help you test and refine, but they can also leave others behind if you're not careful. The crawlers, they move slowly, double check every step, and only adopt once they feel secure. They can frustrate sprinters, but when they commit, they're steady and they're reliable. And then you have the stuck. These are the folks that are caught in grief. They either need focused coaching to move forward, or in some cases, clear accountability if they refuse to move at all. As leaders, we have to respect these different learning patterns. Pushing sprinters too slow frustrates them. Pushing crawlers too fast overwhelms them. Ignoring the stuck lets them drag the culture down. When leaders mistake grief for laziness, they lose trust. When they confuse a slow learner for a resistor, they risk alienating someone who could have become a champion. But when leaders acknowledge grief, respect learning patterns, and coach accordingly, they can unlock commitment. Change isn't a technical process, it's an emotional one. Every change involves loss, and loss creates grief. When you recognize that, you stop asking, why aren't they motivated? And start asking, where are they in the process of letting go and moving forward? Lead with empathy, respect the different learning patterns, and you'll not only move people through grief, you'll bring them to commitment. So, how do you actually motivate everyone? How do you take a group of champions, laggers, and draggers, all with different disc styles, different driving forces, in different places in the CBAM or grief process, and move them forward together? Well, unfortunately, there's no hack or no silver bullet, but there are models that make it possible. And I want to share what has worked for me. Your champions are your secret weapons. These are the people who lean in early, adopt new ideas quickly, and influence others. Here's the trap that most leaders fall into. They assume champions don't need attention. They think, well, they're already on board. I should spend my time on the laggers and the draggers. That's backwards. If you neglect your champions, they'll burn out, or worse, they'll leave. But if you empower them, you multiply their impact. At the auction, I give champions ownership of parts of Shift Happens rollout. One champion led training sessions, another became the go-to problem solver. And when issues popped up, they just weren't participants, they were leaders. And because they were respected by their peers, they pulled the middle forward and the faster we could ever have done by myself. So how do you apply this? So you need to identify your champions early, give them visibility and influence, recognize them publicly and not just privately. Champions are your force multipliers. Treat them like it. The second model I will call is CAT, consistency, accuracy, and transparency. Motivation dies in uncertainty. If people don't trust what you say, they won't follow your lead. Consistency means your words and actions line up day after day. Accuracy means that you get the facts right and admit when you don't know something. Transparency means you share openly, even when the news is tough. At the auction, when we started publishing real check-in times every single week, motivation went up. Why? Because people believed the numbers. They trusted the process. Consistency, accuracy, transparency created trust, and trust is the fuel of motivation. How do you apply this? You need to audit yourself. Where are you inconsistent? You need to check your own accuracy. Do people trust your information, your numbers, your updates, your promises? And then you need to practice transparency. Don't just share the good, you got to share the reality. You got to share the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you want a motivated organization, you're going to have to build trust first. And then the third model is what I call grief to growth. Every change involves loss, and loss creates grief. If you ignore that, people get stuck. If you acknowledge it, you open up the door to growth. Here's how it works. Acknowledge the grief. Say out loud what people are losing: habits, comfort, confidence. Provide hope. Show them the bigger picture, the why behind the change. And then coach to competence. Walk them through until they feel capable again. At the auction, when we shut down the old manual process, people weren't resisting the new system because they hated technology. They were grieving with the loss of being experts at the old system. Once I named it and I paired it with champions for coaching, we began moving forward. So here's how you apply it. In every change, name both the loss and the gain. Don't just announce the new, acknowledge what's ending. Pair sprinters with crawlers so learning is shared. Grief is normal, growth is possible. Leaders help people move from one to the other. So how do you motivate everyone? Well, you don't try to motivate them all the same way. You have to empower champions. You build trust through consistency, accuracy, and transparency. And you move people from grief to growth with empathy and coaching. And here's a simple action step you can try this week. Pick one champion, one lagger, one dragger. Have a conversation with each. Celebrate the champion. Coach the lagger and confront the dragger. You'll be amazed at how much clarity this brings to you as a leader and how much movement it brings to your team. Motivating the entire organization isn't about one big speech. It's about using the right models at the right time so you can meet people where they are, move them forward, and protect the culture along the way. Remember, champions need empowerment, laggers need coaching, and draggers need accountability. Trust is built through consistency, accuracy, and transparency, and growth happens when you guide people through grief, hope, and competence. Not everyone learns at the same pace, not everyone buys at the same time. But when you lead with trust, hope, humility, and empathy, and when you measure progress instead of guessing, you give your organization the best chance to move forward. Thanks for joining me today in this solo episode. If this resonated with you, make sure to subscribe on YouTube and Spotify and connect with me on LinkedIn.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Meet Me at the Gate. I hope the conversations help to fuel your drive and equip you with insights to steer your team toward success. Remember, the road to success is always under construction. And until next time, keep your engines revving and your gas tanks full.